Can I turn the light out for a sec, Dave? I just want to see what
Thank you so much for coming to the first ever Round Lake Speak2. This is fabulous. We had no idea what to expect, and this is really great. It's to benefit the Round Lake Historical Society, close to my heart. I figure you plan an event like this, you get to decide where the money goes. Please help yourself over there. There's hot chocolate, it's amazing. Popcorn, there's water, all free. Help yourself. I want to thank our committee, in no particular order, who helped put this together. Bernadette, Laura, Samantha, Maggie, Tina, who's in Montreal celebrating her birthday, Judy, Adrian, and Christine. All great. Everybody did something different to make this work, and I'm so happy. While I have your attention, the Round Lake Cookie Smackdown is coming up. Sign-up sheets are right there in the hallway if you want to bake cookies to make everyone happy. It's a fun event. It's March 24th. And we look forward to having you. I forgot to thank probably the most important person, Dan Huska. Yes! He did all the lighting, he did the sound, he's amazing. You may not be aware that we rely on him at the auditorium to put things together, make things happen. Every time you sit in those seats and you look up there and there's lights and there's sound, it's all Dan. He's just the best. And I didn't even know he existed until I'm out of here. Thank you. So I am the first storyteller of the evening. And the reason is mostly because I'm here to make everyone else who goes after me look good. Because I've never done this before. I have no idea what I'm doing. So here I go.
You know, Mom is not here.
All right, so when I was 3 years old, my family lived in a little house in Elmira, New York. It was very small. You walked in the front door, there's a room that had a table and chairs around it, and a couch. You kept walking, there was a kitchen. If you didn't walk into the kitchen, you turned right, you walked down a little hallway to the bathroom. There were 2 bedrooms upstairs, but this was the only bathroom in the house. So that's the scene. At this time, my father had not yet come to terms with the fact that his children were now boys. I'm the oldest girl of 3 girls, and I was 3. I think my first sister might have been born at that point. So he was still holding out hope that there would be a boy. He liked to do swimming and hiking and camping and canoeing and all that stuff. He was an Eagle Scout, and it was one of the great joys and prides of his life. So while he was waiting for his son to be born, he was leading a scout troop, which meant that once a week, I don't know what day, a whole bunch of Boy Scouts would knock on our door, walk in, big boys. They all had their little uniforms on, kerchief around their neck, and they were the big boys. Like 10 or 11, and I was 3, of course, so they seemed immense. Anyway, one particular scout meeting night, I should go back a little. I had recently achieved the goal. It's a milestone in every girl's life. I knew how to use the bathroom without any help at all. So I went to the bathroom when this meeting was going on, confident that I could accomplish all that I set out to do in that venture. And indeed I did. I shed my underpants, left them on the bathroom floor. It was the most expeditious way at that time. Climbed the toilet, did what I needed to do, concluded with a flourish, got off the toilet, went to put my underpants on. Now, underpants have 3 holes. It can be confusing. I got 2 legs and holes, the same hole. It wasn't good. So I'm 3. I didn't know, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do about this. So what I do is what I always did. Daddy! No answer. Daddy! Still no answer. So I did the walk to the hallway. Daddy! Nothing. All the way into the living room. Daddy! All the boys around the table. When they came in, it seemed like there were 5, but then at that point there must have been 20 or 30. Every eye turned and looked at me. And my dad was engaged in a very complex transaction with a kid, so he did not leap up and come to my aid. This was the very first moment in my life that I was aware of being embarrassed. Had I realized at that time that it would be a daily occurrence, it may not have been such a big impression. But they were all looking at me, and I'm standing there. One kid, a boy named Tommy, who I knew a little bit because he had a sister who was my age. He also had 2 other siblings that were younger, and he was the second oldest of 8 kids. So I guess he was used to helping out in these situations. He came over, he straightened everything out, got the feet in the right hole, and I went on about my business. And that was my first experience of being aware of kindness, which has been rare in my life, and had I known that, I probably would have made note of it at the time. Okay, flash forward about 20 years. I'm living in Boston. I had a rare opportunity to be away from my little kids. I'm downtown, at Downtown Crossing, where all the fancy department stores are. I look up in a window in Jordan Marsh. There's a whole display of underwear. And on the window it says, Tommy Hilfiger. That was my Tommy. I was Tommy Hilfiger's muse.
Thanks all of you for coming here. This is really great. I don't think we ever knew that this room could be so beautiful and so cozy. Very interesting. So the format of the evening will be that there are 10 storytellers. Lydia was our first. And we want to give everybody an opportunity to sort of breathe between each story. So we'll give you a couple of minutes between each story so you can get up and go get more popcorn or use the restroom. And then I'll announce the next storyteller, after a few minutes have passed. So I'll just give you a few minutes and come back up here and let you know when we're ready to start again. Our next storyteller this evening is Shirley Ryan. The story is called Festive. A story about learning to cry. Okay. Do you want the microphone in the stand, or would you like to hold it?
So let's leave it in the stand.
Okay.
All right. The story I'm going to tell you tonight is a story about when I learned how to drive. I was 30 years old, when I finally got that great way to go. Most of you probably learned to drive when you're in your teens, which you should do, because when you learn when you're 30, you're scared. But anyway, there were 6 kids in my family, only 1 car, and my father wasn't about to take a chance on letting any one of us lose our only means of transportation. But the cars that he drove, I wouldn't have driven anyway. My father had one car that I remember had a hole in the back seat on the floor, and people today worry about seat belts and booster seats, but my father said, just keep your feet up. So that's what we did. But one time, coming back from getting groceries, we were coming down a hill, and we looked ahead on the road, and there's oranges rolling down the street. And somebody put the groceries too close to the hole in the floor. But that's another story. So when I was 30, and 2 of my sisters, both in their 30s, decided that we would have our husbands teach us how to drive. Well, let me tell you, that didn't work out well. Bill, being a very patient man that he is, but he just couldn't get over the fact that I couldn't shift, clutch, and steer all at the same time. So he quit. And Leonard, Beverly's husband, he quit when Bev backed out the driveway, hit the cherry tree. So he quit. And Sally's husband quit because she just didn't want to be told what to do. We decided we better take a driver's ed course, which we did do. So we signed up for a course in Boston Spa, went for a class every week, all 3 of us. In fact, there were 4 of us because we had a sister-in-law who went along with us too. So here we are, 4 women, husband bring us to class, sit in the classroom, then out in the car with the driver, instructor, and that poor guy really earned his money. The 4 of us in the car. And we were always got along really well together and everything, but the driving lesson really made it a little competitive. We were always talking about who had the closest call, what was the closest thing, who would pass, and who wouldn't. All right, so, along with our driving lesson with the teacher, we had to have practice lessons at home. So it was my turn to have a driving lesson, and Len, Bev's husband, was going to be the person that was taking me out for the lesson. So we get in the car, drive to Boston Spa, where we always went, because that's where the road test is given. We wanted to be familiar with everything at Boston Spa when we had to take this test. So I drove from Round Lake to Boston Spa, didn't have any trouble. Got to Boston Spa, I think we were on Route 50 near Stewart's or something, and something startled me. There was a car in front of me, and I almost hit it, and I slammed down the brakes, and almost rear-ended this car, and of course, it was a cop. So he pulled me over and wanted my driver's license, and I said, oh, I don't have a driver's license, I just have a permit, a learner's permit. Where is it? I left it home. Oh, where do you live? And I said, in Round Lake. So he said, Leonard, get out, you can get in the car, and let's go to Round Lake. So there I go to the car, to pull up in front of the house, lights flashing on the car. And Phil says, you're back so soon? Well, there's a little problem. There's a policeman waiting outside to take me to the judge. The judge at that time was Don Reed, and a very nice man, a neighbor, very nice man, was still a judge. And his office was in the village, and it was in the house where Dan and Diane Shapiro live now. So we went into the judge. Leonard and I sat in the living room, I think, and the judge and the cop had a conference on what they were going to do to me. I waited forever, and the judge came out and he said, well, Shirley, I'm going to let you go this time. But the next time you're out, rather without your permit or your license, I'm going to put you in jail overnight. I I assured him that I would be a very good girl from now on and carry my license with me. All right, so in the meantime, we all signed up for our test, took our road test in Boston Spa. I did great, did a parallel park. I haven't done it since. The only criticism he had was bring his car up to speed because I was being so careful. I was driving too slow. Haven't been accused of that ever again. So anyway, we all went home, all the girls, waiting for the results from the Department of Motor Vehicles. And Dick Allen was postmaster at that time. I'm sure we drove him crazy, checking the mail every 2 hours. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, congratulations, everybody passed their test. And that was 50 years ago. I still drive. I know Mario Andretti, but I still go to the post office, the library, the beauty parlor, all the important things. So if you see me coming, just move over.
Thank you, Shirley. Just a little back.
So our next storyteller is Shannon. And the first story is a story of adoption. And she calls it Lost and Found. The best gift of my life was the adoption of my daughter, Susanna. She was born on a Monday in April of '85 and came home on Friday. After years of infertility, he was this perfect brown-haired, brown-eyed girl. The adoption agency had told us, use the word adoption normally. Don't make any surprises when she said something. So we did. We called her a little. We talked about adoption, and she was a little confused. At certain points, she said, "Am I a doctor or am I a doctor?" And she used to have birth memories. She'd say, "It was squishy." And she'd look at me and say, "Were you there?" And I said, but it actually hit home when she was about 5, and she realized what it meant. It meant that someone had given her up. And she cried big tears. The next day I went and bought her a notebook, and I said, "Someday you will find your biological mom, and write down your questions so you'll have them." So years passed, she turned 18, she was legally allowed to find some information and found nothing. Various means never brought any results until this year, the same month that she told me she was going to have a baby herself. Okay. We had worked with an investigator named Shelby who works out of California, who's an attorney and the mother of 2 adopted children. And she used DNA evidence and the information that we had from the adoption agency, and she called and said, "I found her." So, Susanna, and Shelby called the woman who actually was only in Amsterdam, just over the hills. Yes, all these years. And Gina, the bio mom, cried and said, "I thought it was supposed to be a secret." And she said to Susanna, "Don't tell anybody." Well, my daughter was doing a little investigating on her own because we found the mom and the aunts and the cousins and all kinds of people. And she was quite reluctant to meet Susanna, but
They spoke on the phone, and Susanna very respectfully waited 3 months, and then she called cousins who called their mothers, who are her aunts. And then everybody welcomed her. And there was a dinner somewhere in here with my daughter and her husband, her bio mom, and her half-sister. And I got to do what I've always wanted to do, which was to say to Gina, thank you. And I gave her a big hug, and she gave me a big hug, and she said to me, thank you.
Our next speaker tonight is Mike Flannery. And the story is titled Mother Nature, the Powerless and the Powerful.
Hello. Mother Nature, the powerful and the powerless. This is a story of a bunch of guys going on an annual ski trip to the Alps every year for a trade show. We go to Chamonix. If anybody knows Chamonix, the mountain in the Alps, it's the highest peak in the Alps. So we've got 5 guys going to a trade show. The night before, we're in a beautiful chalet, which we do every year, and there's 3 groups. One's the good group, one's the second good group, and then there's the third group. I'm in the third group. The third group is made up of derelicts, late night drinkers, and not good skiers. So, of course, we have the 3:30 in the morning, escargot, French bread, a chef in the house, lots of wine. We're getting the car to pick us up at 6:30 in the morning. Bad call number 1. Our guide, that's our guide for Chamonix, which you have to go up with, gets in the car. So one of my boys is a Harvard boy, and he's always asking the questions, very analytical. So we asked the guy, he goes, how many times have you done this trip? He goes, hundreds of times. I know the mountain like the back of my hand. And the guy's slurring a little bit, and my Bob asks him, he goes, have you ever had any bad things happen? He goes, once I fell in a crevasse and hit my head, fractured my skull, had to get helicoptered out, and so I lost 10% of my brain matter. Red flag number 2. So my boy Bob looks at me and he goes, this is going to be a bad day. So we get to the mountain, and now we're on, if anybody's seen, for your eyes only, the James Bond movie, the tram going up, that's Chamonix. So we go up, the altitude keeps climbing, and we're going up to something like 15,000 feet, or it's the highest peak in the Alps. So we get to the top, and you've got to walk through this rock cave to get to a spot where you walk down. So my second guy goes, I'm not feeling too good, my head's a little dizzy, so he vomits all over the cave. Red flag number 4. So all these signs are already telling us, turn around, go home, this is not going to be good. But it's partly cloudy, it's a beautiful day, everything's looking good, so we proceed. The next thing you have to do is, there's a rope. You have to put your skis in one hand, you have to climb down the rope in the other, and if anybody dating themselves remembers the old Batman show where you feel like you're walking on the side of the building, like this, that's what it was like. So you're looking down, one side is pure rocks, mountain, and nothing but death if you go down. So once you get down to this cliff, now you've got to go up literally about a 90-degree vertical just to get onto the mountain. And this is a big glacier mountain. So we do it, and there's probably at least 4 or 5 feet of fresh powder. It's beautiful. We all fall, we tumble, we get down. As soon as we hit the bottom of the mountain, Mother Nature comes into effect. The clouds close, the snow hits, and it's a blizzard, a complete and utter blizzard. They shut the tram, we're on the mountain, we have one snowboarder, a little Frenchman. His name's Michel. So on glaciers, there's flats. So if you're on skis, even if the snow is deep, you can cross-country ski. You can make your way through the flats. If you're on a snowboard, you can't. you're stepping, you're pushing, you're pulling. So needless to say, to get across the first quarter of a mile, we're towing the Frenchman. We're putting him on our back. And luckily, he's only like 120 pounds. But this gets tiresome, especially when you can't see. Now we're trained. We're all in our chains, because you got to chain up, because there's crevasses everywhere. The guide's in the compass, you can't see. And if you fall down a crevasse, that's why you have your hooks on, so somebody can pull you out. So we're doing this about 2 hours. We're not going anywhere. My big boy, Mike Malika, he's as wide as I am, 6'7". He's carrying him. I'm carrying him. We're pushing him. We're pulling him. The snow is coming down. It is up to our eyeballs. We can't see. We know soon enough we're not going to make it out of here. So we call for a helicopter. They're French. They say, a few more American popsicles. We've seen it before. 120 people die in this mountain per year. Whatever. You're on your own, because they can't get up through the valley. So we find out quickly we're not going to make it to a refuge, so we have to dig a snow cave. We stop, we dig a snow cave, it's dark, we go into the snow cave, it's about maybe 6 inches above our head, and the guide said, don't build it too like this, you gotta build it deep or it could fall. Sure enough, it falls in the middle of the night. We get out, we're freezing, we're exhausted, we're cramped, the snow cave collapses. It's 44 below zero, and that's when you know it's near death. So we have to dig the snow cave again. This time it's like a little grave. So we're all kind of packed in there, snuggled in. I'm in the middle. I'm the central heat source. I'm the potbelly stove for everyone. And the only thing wrong with me is my back's hurting. This guy leaning on me here. This guy leaning on me here. And I have a little Frenchman between my legs. And the little Frenchman says, guess what? I'm like, what? He goes, I gotta pee. Sure enough, he pees all over me. Right between my legs. So it was a little warm, made things a little bit better for a second, then I didn't like it so much. So we stay in there at night, we get through to the morning, we are on walkie-talkie, they know where we are, the helicopter's coming in, we hear it. The helicopter turns around and fades away. They couldn't get through the overpass to pick us up to get us out. So we're on the mountain for at least another night, unless we get to the refuge. We finally, pushing this little Frenchman who would not shut the fuck up. He's on my back, it's like a little midget. He's like, we should talk more. I'm in cardiac arrest. I'm about to die. So we finally made it to the refuge that day. It's at the very end of the day, but before we get there, we can't pull the Frenchman anymore. So the guide says, it's manslaughter and you die. I've never lost anybody before. And we're at that type of situation. So we said, you three, you go down this hill, do not go to the right, you must bear to the left. Once you get to the left, you'll see the tower, the refuge, little stone hut basically, on the top of the mountain. Don't go right. Of course, we start going right. I fall off the side of a cliff, do a tumble, so I'm completely buried, up to my head. And now, the snow is piling above my head, where I'm like, it's like being in a grave and you're gonna die. I'm so tired, I can't move. I'm trapped, I'm in like a cement tomb. So it's the first time I looked up and I'm like, you whip, you're gonna sit here, this is how you're gonna go down? Packed in a snowbank and you can't move? So the guide says, I gotta go help these guys out, we're gonna leave the Frenchman behind. We'll lose one, but we can't lose three. So he leaves a little Frenchman behind, and he's got a, like a walking stick, a thing that you walk with. He gives it to him, and he goes, if things go really bad, put your glove on top of the stick and stick it out in the snow. So we leave him. We make it to the refuge, where our hands are crumpled. It was unbelievable that nobody had lost any digits, but now we're in the hut, and everyone's like, who's calling Michelle's wife? 5 kids. Somebody's got to let her know he's gone. We left him. So, like a scene from a movie, the guy goes back, he finds him, he brings him through into the stone hut where we're staying, we thought we were going to have a call his wife, but we didn't. We spent 3 nights in a refuge. playing cards, drinking croup, the meanest French woman you've ever seen. She lived there alone by herself with a marmot. Does anybody know what a marmot is? It's like a groundhog. We ran out of money. We had no French francs. We drank her out of wine. She asked us to leave. We couldn't get out. And then finally a helicopter picked us up in the morning, got us down, and we got out alive. So that's the story of Mother Nature. So I'll leave you with a quick little poem. We clinched, we fought Mother Nature, but Mother Nature will always win in the end. You can't beat her.
We welcome Paige McCloskey, who will be sharing her story about an unexpected visitor. Did I pronounce that correctly?
It was very close.
Okay, good enough. I figured there's a lot of letters in there.
Just say whatever. Other words. There you go.
Come on up. You guys?
Hi. So I'm going to tell a story that happened about 11 years ago. I guess I'll start. I like to preface this by saying I'm a social worker. I like helping people. It comes naturally, right? No. This is just part of the story. So I'm also kind of tough. I'm a football player, and this night we had football practice.
Go Eagles.
There you go. Yeah. Who said that? So I was coming home from football practice. It was late at night. It was like we had to practice at crazy hours because women could never get a field. So we were practicing from like 9 to 11 at night, and it's sort of in the middle of nowhere in Connecticut. And I'm driving home. I got to get gas. I'm in my '97 Saturn SL1. Beautiful. No. It's like a toy. and I had to stop to get gas. I wanted a protein bar or whatever out of the gas station. And it's a Saturn. I left the doors unlocked. And I go into the gas station and I pay for my gas, and I'm very unobservant. I should have mentioned that as well. I will not, I don't notice anything. So I go in and I pay for my gas, I get the protein bar, I go in the car, pump the gas. I'm going to borrow this. So, yeah, that's good. So say the car's, I'm pumping the gas here, the side of the car, close the gas, get in the car, sit down, look down, there's a hand. There's a hand that's attached to a person. So it's sitting in the car, and so I jump out, right? And sometimes you got the door open, you're leaning, and I'm like, hey man, you scared me. What's up? What are you doing in here? And this guy is like sitting in the passenger seat, and he's kind of mumbling, and he's like, let's go, come on, let's get out of here. And I'm like, do you want me to call a taxi or what? What are you doing? He's like, no, just come on, let's go, let's get out of here. And his eyes are sort of half open. And I'm like, listen, man, looks like you need something, but you gotta get out of the car. And looks up at me and he goes, get the fuck in the car! And I'm like, run into the gas station, and I was not tough. I did not succeed in helping anybody, but I will not leave my Saturn unlocked anymore.
gentlemen, our next storyteller tonight is Sue Thompson. And like most of us, she is constantly searching for her sense of self and identity. And her story tonight is Who I Am is Still in Flux, a journey of self-discovery.
I have no sound effects, but I do have prompts. So I was born December 28, 1957, so I just turned 60. And I always knew I was adopted. I was born in California, in Oakland, and we moved from Oakland when I was about 10, and eventually ended up around like when I was 12. Can everybody hear me away? Yeah. Okay, so I read this book, it's my prop, when I was a child. It's called Chosen Baby, and the Times Union just did an article on it. Yeah? Look at this baby here. Does anybody raise a baby that crawls out of the crib? The whole book is like this, the kid's on the back of the chair and everything. So this was a book that I was read, and I grew up thinking that I was special because I was chosen, not like the Messiah, but I was born and my parents gave me up for adoption, whoever they were at the time. And Bill and Betty Thompson, who a lot of people still remember here, adopted me. And so I tried to, as I was growing up, I tried to figure out, asking different questions in different ways, what they knew about me, always thinking that they knew something, and they weren't telling me. However, during, while I was growing up, there were certain attributes that people that thought that I had based on what my parents knew about my birth parents. And that the first one that I remember was I was dramatic. I was always throwing myself into a problem and making a big fuss about it. I was supposed to be artistic. I was supposed to have mechanical knowledge and mechanical abilities, and I pretty much turned out that way. I got into art. I was supposed to have. I was supposed to be musical as well because my birth parents, one of them was musical, and so I grew up. I moved from California, moved here to Round Lake when I was 12. And pretty much assumed that I was in a normal family, handling being adopted well. I didn't really think about it much until I got older. When I was, like 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to find out about my medical history, so I contacted California Social Services, and they, a year later, they gave me a 17-page narrative of how I was given up for adoption with all the names removed, but the things that I had been told were pretty much in this narrative. And it went on to say that my birth mother already had 3 children, and my birth father knew that I was conceived, but basically faded out of the picture. So around that time, I found my baby book, and in the back, scribbled in pencil, was a name. I knew that my middle name was the same, and I also knew my first name was Heather. So that's when I found out that my name was Heather Lynn Chapman. That was the name I was given at birth. So my middle name was the same, but I had a different first name, different last name. And I did a search, found out that Heather Lynn Chapman, another person, my doppelganger, is an artist and wrote books, but didn't really know much was going on beyond that until last year. Eric, our son, gave us a DNA test, and so we took the DNA test through Ancestry.com, and I started piecing things together. As it turns out, my birth mother is still alive in California, and I have 6 half-siblings, and I wrote my birth mother a letter and sent a picture, and I never heard back from her, which is totally okay, totally fine with me. I also contacted my half-sibling, and I didn't hear anything back from them as well. But I was contacted not too soon after the DNA results were published by a cousin in Scotland. My 4th cousin, Stephen Barry, and I'm a 3rd cousin matched to his father, and he said, "Where did you come from?" because there was a branch of his family that moved through Canada to Colorado. And then another person popped up as being my first cousin once removed. Her name is Mary Martella. And we were able to triangulate it, and with the information I had, I convinced Mary Martella that her first cousin was my birth mother, so she helped facilitate everything. So as it turns out, I'm like the 30th granddaughter, my 30th great grandfather was an Anglo-Saxon prince. So I'm royalty, and and I'm not going to take over any countries anytime soon. I thought I had information that I was related to Harold II, but I can't find that, so I can't really document that. In which case, I was on the losing side of the Battle of Hastings, and I always had a fondness for buying tapestries. So. I don't know. Let me just see if I forgot anything. I don't think I forgot anything. No, but anyway. The anonymous nature of an adoption is no longer anonymous like it used to be with DNA testing. And I think what we're going to see are more and more people finding out who they are. As far as me contacting people or people contacting me, I have contacted about 10 people on my behalf. And Tom, who was adopted, also had his DNA done. And I've contacted people on his behalf as well, and really no one is getting back to us, and that's okay. Who I am is what I made myself, and whether my name was Heather Chapman.
Yes.
Heather Lynn Chapman, or my name was Sharon Alma while I was in foster care for 6 weeks. So I have had a number of names. Briefly, I was Susan Lynn Thompson Heidenschwader, but I dropped that. It was a mouthful. So yeah, that's my story.
Okay, that worked. You know, I'm always afraid that I'm gonna go when I'm talking, so, okay, so you can hear me fine. So our 8th storyteller tonight is Bob Stromberg. And tonight, Bob is going to share with us a story about home improvement, a song that never ends.
Good evening. 6 years ago, I came to live in Round Lake with my wife, Lindy Gutman. And one of the first things I asked her was, "May I please work in your house?" Now, you may be able to tell from just looking at me that I am not a contractor. But I was an aviation electronics technician in the Coast Guard, so while I know electricity is silent, you can't smell it, you can't see it, and it's lethal, I'm not really scared of it. So I could do the house wiring. And I can't do plumbing. I don't want to burn down the house. And I'm a very poor carpenter. But Liddy's house was in a perfect condition for me. It had rag wiring, it had knob and tube wiring, it had Romex that was 2-wire, it had Romex that was 3-wire. It was amazing. So, with new energy, we both got started on planning what to do first. And for years, she had looked at the ceilings of the dining room, the front parlor, and the back parlor, and she had hated the cracks in them, which had been covered over with this kind of popcorn stuff. The cracks were showing through the popcorn stuff. So we said, okay, let's hire somebody to put up drywall over it. I'm not doing a restoration, not back to 1880s, just make it look good. So I said, well, there's a ceiling light over there, there's a ceiling light over there. Let's make some holes and run new wires through these things because the drywall will cover up the holes. Now, for several years now, I've said, if you make a hole in the wall, make it big so you can get in there. And I've learned how to repair mat and plaster with drywall. With enough drywall compound, you can make it disappear. Aha, somebody has done this. So, 20 years ago, I didn't know how to do this. Now I do. And I'm in my late 60s. So it's not like it's impossible to keep learning things. So we hired the workmen, made the holes, did the wiring, the drywall up. We got up there and sanded by hand, the taping job. If you know drywall taping, you know this doesn't work very well. There's a little ridge along there. We were going on vacation. We had it painted, turned on the foyer light, the light shined right along. You could see. Couldn't want this in the front parlor or the back parlor. I finished smoothing it out and we had it painted again. This is a never-ending story. That's only one project. What else is going on? Well, all the wiring has been replaced or disconnected. There's some wiring in the attic floor that's disconnected. And we have worked on almost all of the living spaces. We've had professional work done on the kitchen, professional work done to replace the basement stairs. If you know us, you know the story about the basement stairs. You would step into this little space and go down these wedge-shaped stairs, carrying the laundry. Then coming back up, I can remember the stairs, carrying the dry laundry back up. I'm in my late 60s. I don't want to do this much longer. So with several people coming and conversing and discussing what to do with this, we finally decided to enclose the deck, which was wet all the time or icy and slippery, and make a stairway out around there to come down into the basement and close up this basement stairway and make it into the laundry room right off the kitchen. Quite a project. How long did it take? 2 months. Well, no. Lindy, how long did it take to finish?
5 months.
5 months.
Is it done yet?
Stage A is done. The permits for this work involve 2 stages. In the second stage, we're financially exhausted. We're going to wait to do the second stage, which is adding to the kitchen over the crumbling concrete porch along Berlin Avenue. So, stage after stage, we work on this, and they take forever. I got to go. Nobody would hire me to do this. But luckily, I don't have any boss telling me what to do and how to get it done. Clean it up by 5 o'clock. Well, she does want me to clean it up more than I do. So gradually, I take on one project after the other. You saw me kind of wandering up here because I have vertigo now. So limitations are coming in. Ladders. Very careful with ladders. Take that last step carefully. And what's left? Well, the basement. the attic, very cold these days, and the exterior, which involves ladders. And I will not climb very far on the ladder. And we have plenty to do. But you may have traveled along on a very flat place and seen the horizon going out beyond. As far as you go, the horizon keeps going forward. Home movement projects, never-ending story.
Our next storyteller is Maggie McDonough, and she is going to share with us a love story.
They called her useless. This family that was the first owners of my dog when I was a kid. And useless was this lovely hound mix, and she had big, round, soulful eyes, and freckles on her snout, and a white tip on her tail, and she was this lovely dog. And she lived with this family who lived around the corner from us. She consisted of mom and a dad who were constantly yelling at each other, and their 3 monster little boys. I'm sorry, the truth is what it is. They were always filthy, they had snotty noses, and the youngest one never wore anything more than a diaper. And these kids were miserable to useless. They chased her, they would chase her screaming, they would throw sticks and toys at her. Sometimes they would even lock her up for hours at a time in this rusted old car they had in their driveway. My mother used to call this family trashy. And even though I was just a little kid, I really kind of got the gist of what she meant. But with, abuse often comes neglect. And the kind of neglect that Useless had was they let her run around free at large in the neighborhood. They never really kind of took her on walks or anything. But luckily, I was also running around free at large in the neighborhood with a group of kids. It was summer. I was 7. And she just kind of attached herself to us. I always marveled at the fact that she had been treated so badly by kids in her own home, and yet when she was with children who were nice to her, she could relax and play and have a good time. She and I became instant best friends. Even though there was a lot of other kids, she and I were always side by side. It was a great summer that way. And I would spend the day with her even after the other kids went home. I would take her home when I had to go for lunch, and I would sneak her pieces of bologna. And my mother would make a big stink about giving our good food, bologna, to that pathetic-looking dog, which I turned a deaf ear to and did anyway. And I think she knew, but she just had to make a big deal out of it. So one day I went to call for Penny to come out and play, and I don't know if that's a regional thing or not, but I grew up on Long Island. And when you went to go play with friends, you went to call for them. Go call for Mary, go call for Susie. And that's how I went to call for Useless. Her mother met me, her owner met me at the door and said, Useless is not going to be able to run around with you guys for quite a while. She's just had puppies. Puppies? How did that happen? I honestly had no idea. I had no idea that this was a pregnant dog running around with us all those weeks. But she let me come in and see the puppies, who were adorable, but mostly I was just relieved to see that Useless was okay. That was my main concern. Then this lady tells me, we're going to have to find homes for all these puppies, and would you like to take one with you? I was like, yes. And there just happened to be one that looked almost exactly like his mother. It was this little male, and he had the freckles and everything. He was adorable. I said, I want him. And then I thought, oh my God, now I gotta get permission to do this. So I ran home and I'm thinking, how am I gonna do this? How am I gonna do this? Because my mother was not given to saying yes very often. She was kind of hard. Her knee-jerk reaction was no, pretty much no matter what, however small the request. And sometimes, if you caught her in a really bad mood, you could get punished just for asking for something. But this was a puppy, so well worth the risk. So I asked. And miracle of a miracle, she said yes. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my luck, because in my mind, I'm getting 2 dogs here. This puppy's gonna be my own dog. And Useless will just keep running around and playing with us, forever, because that's the way I wanted it to be and that's what I believed. So I went to visit Useless and her puppies every day. And then one day, the lady says, come here, I need to talk to you again. And she's really, really serious. And she said, I just want you to know, she says, with a cigarette hanging out of her mouth with this much ash on it, it's bobbing up and down. She goes, I just want you to know that we've decided that after all these puppies get a home, we're going to have to send Useless to the pound. Because she and I can't keep getting pregnant at the same time. I was 7. And I know that things are much different now, and little kids are really aware of all this stuff. But even then, there was a part of my brain that was saying, could you be more inappropriate? so I was just like, oh, the pound. And she said, yeah, and I have to tell you, she's not a young dog. I don't think anyone will adopt her, and I think they'll just wind up putting her to sleep. So that was struck fear in my heart, and she said, I'm telling you this because I know how much you love her. And I thought that, given what we're going to do, I thought that you might want to take Useless instead of the puppy. And I said, well, yes, give the puppy to someone else. We're taking Useless, this is it. And now I've got to go home again and ask my mother and tell her, change your plans. So I did, I went home and I gave her my best pitch with a dramatic wind-up. They're going to kill her! And my mother, steely-eyed, stared at me, didn't bat an eye. And then she said, how soon can you bring her home? Thank you. I was beside myself with joy. So, the puppies all got homes, and then Useless came to live with us. First thing we did was change her name. And my mother said, her coat is the same color as a Penny. Why don't we call her Penny? So Penny it was. So now she was Penny, and now she was our dog. And my mother, who was kind of hard-edged, somehow decided that she was going to make it her mission to bring Penny back to health and get those bones to stop sticking out, that you could see her ribs and her coat was all dull. So my mother cooked her marrow bones and gave her chicken on top of her kibble, and it just spoiled her. So Penny fattened up, and she got a shiny coat, and she learned to relax and trust her new family. But one thing that I noticed, maybe nobody else in my family noticed, is that, and I forgot to mention this part, but I had to laugh. My mother looked down her nose at this family that Penny came from. And yet, we were a pretty dysfunctional family too. And there was a lot of tension. We had issues of our own, and there was always bickering and fighting going on. And it was not a very happy place to grow up. So I kind of thought that Penny and I had that in common, and that we could make things better for each other, which is exactly what happened. But what I noticed is that even though there was all this sniping and bickering going on in my family, everybody loved Penny. Everybody was kind to Penny. And sometimes people would just stop arguing if it was time to feed Penny, or time to brush Penny, or she just walked up asking to be petted. And I thought, what an incredible effect she had on us. And those people called her Useless. We had her with us for 11 years. And she was 3 when we got her. She passed away when she was 14. I was home for the summer after my freshman year in college. And she died in my bedroom. I was with her when she passed away. Broke my heart, lost my very best friend. But I look back and I think how lucky we all were to have her in our lives, because she was gentle and sweet and patient, and devoted. And she brought in characteristics to our home which were sadly lacking most of the time, but I think she touched each and every one of us. One other thing, real quick, I'll mention is that at one point when I was about 12, people used to joke about her because she was so meek and timid because she had been abused, but she was so timid and afraid of her own shadow, people used to joke about what a chicken she was, and she was a coward. One night when I was about 12, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of her growling and snarling, vicious, like I thought, this couldn't be Penny, this is not who she is, but I ran out to the living room, and there she was, standing in, it was like moonlight coming through the window, and I could barely make out. She had all the hackles on her back were standing up, and she baring her teeth, and I look at the front door, and there's this hand pulling the door shut really quick. This is a vicious dog. I'm gonna get him. Someone was trying to break in. That never happened before, and I screamed for my father, and he never caught the guy. But she protected our home. She defended us. And they called her useless.
Now we are on the 10th story, our grand finale. We are going to be hearing from Bob Sweet, who is going to tell us the story of a plane and a name.
So how do you think Lauren's doing so far? Also, I want to thank all of the people who have spoken before. You've set the bar pretty damn high. I have a story about a plane, a bomber, B-29, that flew in the South Pacific at the end of World War II. Probably the most dangerous time a plane could be in the air. Japan knew it was losing the war. They were desperately throwing everything they had at the Allied forces in the hope of stopping from being invaded. The plane had a funny name. It was called Swoos. It was named that by the pilot, Hank Kurtz. He said, "It may look like a goose, but it flies like a swan." Hence the Swoos. Hank had a mystical feeling about the Swoos. He honestly felt that this plane somehow was going to get him safely through the war and return him to northern Michigan and his wife, Nora. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of every mission, all of the crew members would put $10 in a pot, and at the end of the mission, the one who would guess closest to the number of bullet holes in the plane would win. Hank always took the number 0. He never wanted to vote against the plane. When the war ended, and the Swoos had done his job, gotten him safely through the war, both he and the Swoos were stationed in an airport near Washington, D.C., and the Air Force assigned the Swoos to ferrying politicians around to various military bases. That worked well. It was easy duty, and they had a lot of time enjoying each other, Hank and the Swoos. But then, one tall, skinny congressman from Texas booked the plane to take it to Guam, and that created a problem. When the plane returned stateside, they had removed its guns and they had removed all of the armor plating. That changed the metal mass of the plane, and that affected the compass that was on board. Didn't matter when they were flying around the United States and they were in constant radio contact, and also had a lot of visual clues as to where they were going, but when they got out over water and were flying on instruments, that became a problem. They were off by 8 degrees and they missed Guam. Hank started flying circles, ever widening, hoping to find something. In the back of the plane, the congressman freaked out, started screaming and shouting, so much so the sergeant buckled him in his seat and told him if he didn't shut up, he was going to throw him out of the plane. Up in the cockpit, Hank remembered that when they were on bombing missions, before they ever got to the mainland, they could pick up Japanese radio. So he told the radio man to start swinging the plane's antenna around, and sure enough, they caught the strains of Benny Goodman and the Big Band. and zeroed in on that course, and they arrived safely at Guam. Naturally, the politician got off the plane and immediately held a press conference talking about his near-death experience. He actually did pretty well for himself. He went on to be senator and majority leader, vice president, and then president. His name was Lyndon Baines Johnson, but the story's not about him. The story's about the plane. At the end of Hank's tour of duty, he went to northern Michigan, and he opened a car dealership, and he did very well. So well, in fact, that after a couple of years, he was able to buy the swoops. He went down to Amarillo, Texas, where it had been mothballed. He got it running again, flew it home, and one of his greatest joys was taking school children on tours through the swoops. As a matter of fact, when he and Nora had a little baby girl, they named her after the plane. She grew up and worked in the entertainment business. You've probably seen her. If you ever watch the program Mike and Molly, the mother is played by an actress named Swoosie Kurtz. And that's the little girl that was named after the plane with the funny name.
Well, this has been just such a fabulous evening, and it's been such a joy to listen to everybody's stories, and I hope we have an opportunity to do this again. I also want to really just sort of emphasize the effort that was put into this. I would say 99% of what you see tonight was Lydia Hoffman. And that includes these really sweet appreciations to be distributed to all of tonight's storytellers. So if all of you could come up here, come on back up. Let's see, we've got Pete, we've got Bob, we've got Lindy and Bob and Maggie and Sue and Katie and Lydia.
Can I turn the light out for a sec, Dave? I just want to see what it looks like.
It looks awesome.